My name is Oriana Dunker, and I've been involved with 826 Boston for around 7 years through after school tutoring and the Youth Literary Advisory Board. So this morning, we're very excited to turn the tables and be the journalists with our special guest this morning, Yamiche Alcindor.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Hi, my name is Vanessa, and I'm originally from Haiti. I went to Boston National Newcomers Academy and visited 86 Boston Writers Room. And right now I'm attending UMass Amherst. And this spring, I also became a published author with the 86 Boston. So going to get us started by asking our first question, which is what made you choose journalism as a career, and what do you like best about journalism?
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for that question, Vanessa. And it's so exciting to connect with you. I'm Haitian as well. My mom actually went to UMass Amherst, so she is followed in the same footsteps that you're doing right now. So I really wish you luck in your studies. So why did I become a journalist? I love the idea of storytelling. I love the idea of focusing on civil rights, of interviewing and really informing the population about vulnerable populations, about the things in our country that are still struggling, the inequalities in our country. Think about COVID and the way that it disproportionately killed African Americans and Latinos. Also the pandemic, the way that women disproportionately fell out of the workforce. All of those things were really, really important to me. And I discovered journalism in high school, learning about the civil rights movement. And I knew instantly that I wanted to be a journalist. So I've been lucky enough to be able to walk in that and to have that as my calling and my purpose.
Thank you. And first, I want to congratulate you on the recent news that you will take over and host Washington Week. So, how does that feel?
I'm super excited. I'm so excited. It's going to be, I think, a great time in my life, and I'm really excited for this next phase of my life. And I'm so excited to think about Washington Week, to make it relevant, to make it something that people watch and feel like their issues are centered. It has a great legacy and a great tradition of having some of the best reporters in the business come to the table. So I'm very, very excited about that.
Yes, I'm excited for you. And speaking of that, has your identity being a woman, being Black, how has that influenced your career? And do you believe that influence elevates your work?
How has being a woman influenced my career? I think for me, it's how's being a woman, how's being a child of immigrants, how has being from Miami, a Black woman, all of those things influence my career and influence my work. The way that I see the world is through the lens of working class people, of immigrants who came to this country wanting a better life, thinking of our democracy as somewhere safe. So in my mind, all of the things, all my entire identity really has, I think, influenced my reporting, the way that I craft stories. I'm always constantly thinking about civil rights and social justice when I write my questions. It might not always be the question that I ask. Sometimes I'll end up asking about the economy or foreign policy, but it's always the back of my mind and it's always important.
So I'm happy that we have a lot of in common. One question that I have is mostly like how the fact that your parents are Haitian has formed the person that you are right now. How this contributed to your to who you are today.
It's a great question, and in some ways, it connects with the earlier question. For me, being a child of Haitian immigrants really informed the way that I see the world, the way that I see how this society is either treating people equally or not equally. The way that I think of America as a place where people come to really find solace and to find safety, to find work and education and opportunity. So for me, being Haitian American is really core to my being, and for me, it's really influenced the way that I see the world, and it's also influenced the people that I want to write about. So I would say at least once a year, I do a story on Haiti or I do a story on Haitian Americans, and I do that because for me, it's a story that I can't ignore, and it's a story that's such a part of my life and my family. So in some ways, I think that is also a way that it directly influences. I write about Haiti, I do stories about Haiti, but I also in looking at other stories and just the way I do my job and the way I cover the economy or education, it's part of all of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And in your career, what is the significance of facts, being truthful, and being unbiased when it comes to your journalism and reporting? Especially now that, like, if you don't like a fact, you can call it a lie, and struggles there.
Uh, to me, I think truth and truth telling have to be the core of what journalism is. It has to be looking at things and saying, "Here's how they are. Here's what's going on." I think for me, it really is this opportunity to inform people about the world that we're living in. I'm really, really excited about the idea that when you are a journalist, you're writing the first draft of history. So I think in that way, even though it's a draft, I think we have to be real with people. One of the earliest things that I was told in my journalism career was to say things simply, to explain them like you would be talking to a middle schooler. So for me, that really does mean if someone says a lie, then to call it a lie and not to come up with some other word that's convoluted. If someone's trying to mislead the American public, then to say they're trying to do that. So I really think in some ways my journalism is about being genuine and about being down to earth.
Following up with this question, so have you ever had to compromise your beliefs or ideals for an article or to cover a story?
It's a really great question. And I've been really, really lucky that I have not had to compromise and I have not had to feel like I was doing a story that went against my values. I've always worked for places where my supervisors, my editors, my producers have really valued um, just what I believe in and justice and truth telling. So I've never worked at a place where I've had to do a story or had to say something that I didn't believe in and didn't really believe to be the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you. And what do you believe journalism's role is in preserving our democracy? And how does your work and what you do contribute to that?
I think journalism preserves democracy by holding leaders accountable and by really being a medium where people can be transparent and people can understand how the government is working for them or not working for them. So for me, I think it's really, really important to be thinking about journalism as a vehicle for democracy. Just look at January 6th. The stories that came out of that you know, the mob that broke into the U.S. Capitol, they were doing all of that based on a lie. They were doing all of that because people were saying, including, of course, former President Trump, that the election was stolen, when, of course, it was not. The election was not stolen. And I think journalism has to be the medium where we continue to say that and continue to be clear-eyed about what this nation can be and what this nation is. And when we see people misleading the American public, we need to call that out. So to me, it is absolutely critical to our democracy. And I always tell people my job is in the Constitution, right? My job is part of how the founders, while they were flawed people for all sorts of reasons, mainly because they were not treating people equally as they said they were going to be doing. But the founders did see that the free press had to exist along with the actual institutions of our government and that they all had to be enshrined in the Constitution.
Right. And as a self-proclaimed civil rights journalist, what has motivated you to pursue this area of journalism, talking about civil rights a lot in your work?
For me, what's motivated me is some of the things that I just mentioned. It's about the fact that America has these really bold principles to treat people equally, to treat every man and woman equally, to make sure that people have the pursuit of happiness and opportunity. And that's something that's great on paper, but the country is still not at the point where that is the case for every American. No one. Americans don't all have the same access to happiness, to the pursuit of happiness, to wealth and education and all of the different things that makes America America. So in some ways, I think journalism has to be the place where we talk about those things and where we expose those things. And that's why I consider myself a civil rights journalist, because I think every aspect of our society, whether it's economics or healthcare or education or anything else, transportation, you name the part of our society, all of it comes back to this idea of, are we treating people equally? And a lot of times the answer to that question based on statistics and data is no.
Um, so the next question is concerning COVID-19. What has it been like covering COVID-19, and what have you learned, and how the whole pandemic situation has changed you?
So could you say that again?
Um, so what has it been like covering COVID-19, and what have you learned from the whole situation of COVID-19, and how has it changed you personally?
Yeah, I mean, those are three big questions. I wanted to make sure I heard them all because they're such big
Sorry.
questions, right? Like that's a lot, right? I would say the first is, covering COVID-19 has been a whirlwind. Learning how to interview people on Zoom and Skype and trying to get people to open up about the hardest parts of their lives over the internet and virtually has been a real challenge. But it's also been this beautiful thing where I think we've learned through the media, through NewsHour, we've learned how to tell people stories well through both the internet, but also, of course, safely through social distancing and showing up places. I think COVID-19, what it's taught me has been that we really need a lot of empathy and that we really need to think about the way that we talk about this pandemic as a as the way vulnerable populations are experiencing it. So for instance, we often say people should social distance. Well, there are so many people who are living in houses where there are 4 or 5 generations in one house and they can't social distance. We talk a lot about people working from home and the remote working, but there are so many people in this country who can't work from home if they're a bus driver or a grocery store worker or an Amazon factory worker. So many of the people that are critical to our society, critical to the functioning of our economy, but also I would say our democracy. There are people who are paid the least amount, and there are people who are now having to expose themselves the most when it comes to a pandemic. So I think that I've learned a lot about just empathy and trying to really, in my reporting, shine a light on that. And then for myself personally, I mean, it's just been tough. I've not seen my family as much as I want to. Haitians in particular, we love our family. I love going to Miami to see my family, and it's just been tough to not have that opportunity to really connect with people. But I've had to, of course, cope as we all have, and really do it. And I think pushing through in the last year and in this year, it's just taught me the value of having friends and family that really care about me.
Yes, thank you. And being a journalist, you face so much criticism. So, how do you differentiate between being reasonable and assertive and being disrespectful or cynical? So, how do you remain self assured in your composure and professionalism, whether or not you're facing adversity or silencing while you're working?
Well, it's a good question because I think so many people face tough times and have faced tough times in these times. Um, I really think that the way that I've done it is to focus on the work and to do the work. So I think about the last year and the death of George Floyd. It's really taught me to kind of really try to bury myself and to do the work that I find is my purpose and my calling. So I think that's the way that I've really navigated that. Of course, I had interactions with the president that were televised and sometimes tense, but I think overall, what I've learned is just to really focus on why I'm doing the work of journalism, and that's helped me really get through the tough times.
Yes, thank you. And speaking of that, when is it important to take a break or acknowledge when you're getting burnt out, especially when it comes to how you take care of yourself doing a job that comes with so many obstacles?
It's great to be able to go and to do this work and to be a journalist, but I think you really one have to listen to your body. I think if anything in the last year and a half, so many Americans, as we've tried to really like make sure that we're healthy and not having the coronavirus pandemic, we've had to really pay attention to our symptoms and the way that our body is functioning. And I would say that that's a lesson that I'm going to carry on and carry through. It's going to be about really trying to make sure that I am healthy and when I need a break, if I'm tired or I need a day off, then I take that day off. So I think for me, it's really important to do that and really important to kind of take a deep breath and say, okay, I need a minute here. And I think it's good to be able to be true to yourself and say that. Oh, are you on mute? I think I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Finally, my last question is, what advice do you have for young writers like us?
Um, my advice to young writers, to young people, really, whether you want to be a journalist or whether you want to be a lawyer or a scientist or an astronaut, my advice is to really a couple things. One, find people who will have your back. Um, Lean on those people, whether it's your family, your siblings, your friends, your classmates. Find people who you can just open up with, who can just really support you, who see you and want well for you, who wish you well. That's what you really want. You want people who will be there for you, because it's going to be such tough times. Even if you get your dream job, it's going to be a grind to do that job. Even if you get laid off, those are the people that you're going to call. So I think really focusing on making sure you have a good system and a good support system is the key here. I also think that find mentors, find people who are doing the things that you want to do and go after them. So for me, I was really lucky to be mentored by a woman named Athalia Knight. She was a longtime Washington Post correspondent. There was also this woman, a longtime NewsHour and Washington Week host named Gwen Eiffel, who also mentored me. So for me, it's really been key to just find people, men and women, and of all ages, to help me out. So I have some mentors that are in their 90s. I have some mentors that are the same age as me. We're peer mentors because we're going through this together. So I think when you think of mentors, you don't have to only think, oh, I'm going to have to have my professors. You might have a student. If you're a senior, you might have someone who's a junior, or I should say, if you're a freshman, maybe your mentor is a junior, because that person knows exactly what you're going through. So I think I would be open to just having mentors. And the last thing I would say is, don't listen to the people who are frankly haters, who tell you maybe you can't do what you set out to do. Maybe someone's going to tell you, oh, being an astronaut is stupid, or they're going to tell you, oh, you don't write really well, so that you're not going to be a good writer. I tell you, I've heard so many things about myself. I've had people in newsrooms tell me, you don't look confident enough. You're not pretty enough to be on TV. Your hair is, you have to change your hair to be on TV. I've had so many people tell me so many different things, and here I am. Really, I feel like surviving and thriving, and it's tough still. I still have people, and I'm still, of course, struggling every day to kind of get up and do the job and be confident. But if you have the people around you who will also have your back, then you can do that stuff and you can get through that. So I would say, don't listen to people. If you're talking to someone and they're telling you, they're not trying to help you, they're just saying, oh no, you should give that up because I can't see that, then let that person go to the side. You need people who can say, oh, you know what? You want to be a writer right now, your spelling isn't great. Or you really need to work on your diction, or you need to be more creative, or you need to spend more time on this. Those are the people that are giving you constructive criticism that you should be open to taking. But if it's just someone saying, you're never going to be able to do what you set out to do, just go away from that person and go find people who will be cheerleaders for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for attending with us today. I speak from all of our guests when I say that it has been a really interesting conversation. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.